All right, everybody. So damage report's not going to be super long. I wanted to do it yesterday, but I got preoccupied with other stuff today. I actually have time. And as shown in the little ticker down here that I'm going to take off because I don't need it no more. Let's get rid of that. Also, landfall hour will happen tonight. More like it'll be around 6. It'll probably run until 7, so that way I can overlap with ESPN's pregame and offer you guys a better alternative than listening to PK Subban sit there and clearly be biased against one team and continuously be wrong about basically fucking everything lately. Everything when it comes to the Canes. He hadn't gotten anything right. Nothing. All right, we'll get to some of the comments here first, but let me read the disclaimer, please, or at least show it on there. I don't own any of this data. I just want to cite my sources that I use and everything. Please do not sue me. Hockey Boy 2014 says, yo, I don't know if you're new or not, but that's a lot of braids going on that kid there, but welcome to the show either way. BTS says, yellow, what's up, buddy? Good to see you. Lackey, what's up, dude? All righty. So, getting into what occurred in Game 1. Carolina played excellent. I could not be much happier with how they played. About the only thing they really need to do, and I know PK Subban said it too, but he was saying it to be condescending. He wasn't saying it to be analytical, because as we saw with the last series, he doesn't know how to be analytical in a lot of cases when it comes to the Canes. I don't know if he's just genuinely trying to be that biased just for the hell of it, or if he legitimately just does not know. Either way, he's been wrong about everything. So in Game 1, Carolina won in overtime with a final score of 2-1. We will go over each individual goal and some other notes that occurred of things that occurred during the game. Overall expected goals, 4.41 for Carolina to 2.29 for Washington. Expected goals 5-on-5, Carolina had 3.82 to Washington's 1.31 according to Money Puck. Power play, Carolina was 0 for 3. And Washington was 0 for 2. So special teams ultimately ended up being a neutral factor with this, except for the fact that Carolina is continuing to maintain that 100% penalty kill. No shorthanded goals were scored. 5-on-5 goals were the only goal scored, which is why they were 2-1. Shots on goal, Carolina had 35 to 14 shot attempts. Carolina had 94 total to Washington's 34. Carolina had more shots on goal than Washington had shot attempts, and that's not anything to be upset about. Like I said, I'd like for more than to generate more quality chances, but this is definitely a step in the right direction. That's the type of game you need to have against a team like Washington to really dominate them. Hey, Frank. Let's see. So face-off percentage, Carolina dominated there. Face-offs are the original possession metric, if you ask me. 55.6 to 44.4. Penalty minutes, 4 to 6. Now, I'm going to say something that I don't normally say, and a lot of Capitals fans and maybe even a few Hurricanes fans would disagree with me on this. And it's really surprising considering that TJ Luxmore was out there. That game was very well officiated. For the most part, they let them play. There were a couple of things that I think maybe they shouldn't have let go on both sides, but for the most part, they let them play, and I think that game was very well officiated. And I almost never say that, but that game was very well officiated. So going on here to look at the event summary here and everything like that. So in the first period, Carolina came out really, really strong from the get-go. Sebastian Aho was called for a high sticking penalty against Alexiev. And during that penalty kill, I feel like the Hurricanes really kind of established their game thanks to how good their penalty kill has been. They kind of set the tone for the rest of the night. Jacob Slavin had a couple of really critical blocks during that. They were really good with their gaps. They were very aggressive. Washington's got a lot of guys who can put the puck in the net, and they got a decent amount of guys who can play make, especially on that top power play unit, which is where they're all at. And their second unit's pretty solid as well. Carolina absolutely stifled their power play, particularly that very first one. And I think that really put things in motion for them to be good for the rest of the game. So Carolina continued to dominate 5-on-5. They had a high shot volume, a lot of possession. The forechecking was really good. They do need to get to the interior of the ice a little bit more. The biggest reason I say that is Washington also plays man-on-man defense like I was talking about in the series forecast. So they were placing an emphasis on blocking shots from the point because they know that we're going to shoot them from there. So their wingers, and in some cases their centers, depending on who is up there at the time, or even in some cases, defensemen are up there at a time because, like I said, they play man-on-man, so they find themselves cycling around, following somebody around in a lot of situations. Whoever they have at the point gapping up on our defensemen shooting from the point, all those guys were doing a pretty solid job. They got worn down over the course of the game, but the Caps were doing a pretty solid job reducing chance quality on shots from the point. They were blocking a lot of them. I expect that they're going to ramp that up even more tonight because I don't think they want to deal with another game where Carolina has 94 shot attempts, and they definitely don't want to deal with one where they have 35 on net or get any great degree of 94 shot attempts through. That wouldn't be good for them, so I think that they're really going to ramp up the shot blocking. So Brandon Duhaime got called for holding against Dmitry Orlov at 14:51 of the first period. Kane's power play needs to do some work. It didn't look awful. I've definitely seen it look worse, but power play 1 was just, it wasn't there. Power play 2 looked a lot better, but that first unit's got to get going. If it keeps doing stuff like this, it's not going to work. At the end of that period, the shots were 12-5 in favor of Carolina, which was indicative of how the game was going up to that point. Now, when you go to the second period, long change, Carolina tends to dominate a lot of times during long change. They didn't so much in this case. It was a situation of bend but don't break. Washington did push back in this period, and this was the most even period that you had throughout the course of the game because after the second period, I don't think that game was even at all. So shots in there 8-6 favoring Carolina. Washington came out playing significantly better. No penalties were called during the second period. The only goal that Washington scored that night and the only goal of the second period and the first goal of the game up to that point was scored by Alexei Protas from Brandon Duhaime and John Carlson. Anderson probably wants that one back. That wasn't the greatest quality chance. We'll get to that here in a little bit because I'm going to go into detail on every goal that was scored. But outside the dots, that one can't happen, but that wasn't entirely on him either. Gostisbehere made a ill-advised, he lost a battle that he probably shouldn't have lost and left Sean Walker hung out to dry. So that's just one of those situations where you can put a little bit of blame on Freddie, a little bit of blame on Walker, and a little bit of blame on Ghost. That was just a really bad breakdown that eventually resulted in a low-quality chance becoming a goal. So that's something that they got to clean up and can't let that happen frequently. So this was the closest period of the game up until that point. You go into the third period, Carolina was dominant again, 11 shots to Washington's 3. Mark Jankowski left the game with an undisclosed injury, and he is a game-time decision tonight. I'm hoping he will play. I think he was really good. Jackson Blake was called for tripping against John Carlson. The Hurricanes had another good penalty kill. Alex Ovechkin was called for slashing against Jordan Staal at 2:28. Nothing resulted from that power play. I think it looked a little bit better than the first one, but it still wasn't great. Logan Stankoven finally beats Logan Thompson on the glove side because I'm telling you that Logan Thompson was flashing the leather that entire game. And I was like, if we're going to beat him, we're not going to beat him glove side. But then Stankoven, I had a feeling if anybody was going to do it, if you follow me on X, you saw what I posted, that I think if anybody's going to get through there, it's going to be Stankoven. And he definitely did. Really good entry by Taylor Hall. Really good hard forecheck by Jesperi Kotkaniemi to get the puck back and eventually create that opportunity for Logan Stankoven to go to the middle and finish on that. That ties the game 1-1. And as the third period progressed, we eventually got to where Jacob Chikrin was called for high sticking against Andrei Svechnikov. Now, there's something I'm going to talk about this twice. Rod made a really good game management decision at the end of the game here. So the first power play unit went out there, still was kind of stagnant, not moving around enough. Too much cycling, too much passing, feet weren't moving enough, not getting enough shots on net. It needs some work. It's going to have to be better throughout this series if Carolina's going to win because it was mediocre at best for most of it. Rod made a really, really good decision to put the second power play unit out at that critical juncture in the game because I think that prevented a shorthanded scoring opportunity for Washington right there near the end. And then we go on to overtime. Washington, ignore that first note there. I forgot to delete that from the duplicate. Jacob Slavin scores the overtime winner from Jordan Martinook and Dmitry Orlov. This goes back to Rod's good game management decision because there's a distinct possibility they don't even make it to overtime if the first power play unit is still out there at the end of the third period, and they probably get burned, and Washington maybe scores a shorthanded goal because of it. There were only 2 shots in that period. Both of them belonged to Carolina, and Jacob Slavin manages to put the game away at that point. So now when we go into the scoring summary here, here's where we're going to talk about each goal in detail. All 3 of the goals scored in this game were 5-on-5. Special teams are not a factor other than every single penalty in the game getting killed off. Alexi Protas scored the first goal from Brandon Duhaime and John Carlson at 3:53 of the second period. It was 5-on-5, medium quality chance, Protas's first goal of the playoffs and of the series. So Ghost lost a battle that he shouldn't have lost. Sean Walker got hung out to dry, and that created that 2-on-1. Protas was outside the dots. He's got a hell of a shot, Protas does, but that's one of those ones I think Freddie really, really wanted to have back, and it beats him blocker side. That was one of those ones I kind of got to split the blame sort of evenly between those 3 in that regard, but it was a pretty low-quality chance. I put it as a medium just because of, Protas's ability to shoot the puck, and that's not even like a metric of chance quality that I'm using. That's just my personal observation about it. That was a medium quality chance, kind of a soft goal. It's definitely one that I think Freddie should have had, but that was just a breakdown in coverage. It all starts with Ghost losing that puck battle, so you can't be having that tonight. And y'all know I'm a big Gostisbehere fan, but last night was one of the worst, night before last was one of the worst games I've ever seen Gostisbehere have. By far, he cannot have another game like that. And if the power play is going to get going, he's going to have to be a big part of it. So we go on to the third period here. The only goal scored in the third period was the game-tying goal that Logan Stankoven scored. So there was a hard-working forechecking shift here that created the opportunity. Taylor Hall entered the zone initially. He lost the puck, and Jesperi Kotkaniemi forechecked really hard, fed it to the slot where Logan Stankoven was, and he's got that amazing snapshot of his. He got it off very quickly and scored. So that goal was just a lot of hard work, and Logan Stankoven going and being able to find open ice in the slot like that and able to finish that chance. So that was an excellent job on the part of Jesperi Kotkaniemi. I think he's the one who really, really made that goal happen after Washington got the puck back for a little bit on Taylor Hall's entry. And this is one of the things I talked about in the series forecast. Washington has a hard time getting the puck back in the defensive zone. Normally, once they do get it, they don't have a hard time exiting. That's where Carolina's vicious forecheck has to come in. And there we go. So Really good job by Jesperi Kotkaniemi to keep that play alive. So that goal shows like why he's such a good player on this team and why we need to keep him, even if he didn't turn out to be the high-end second line center we wanted. He makes plays like that. And when he's got the right line mates, he's a very effective player. And I think Taylor Hall has really brought out the most in him. So we go to the last shift, or to the game-winning goal here in overtime. Jacob Slavin from Jordan Martinook to Dmitry Orlov. Again, a 5-on-5 goal. I call this a medium quality chance. This was Jacob Slavin's third goal of the playoffs. Slavin scores the game-winning goal on the 35th shot on goal. 94th shot attempt by the Canes. A layered screen out in front blinds Logan Thompson. The puck slipped under his pad and his skate. So for all the point shots that were going on the other night and the 5 posts that were hit and everything like that, at least one of them finally got through at the right time. Now, you cannot always rely on that happening, but Carolina, between 5 posts and having, I think it was how many expected goals they had total, 5-on-5, 4.41 total expected goals and 3.82 of that coming 5-on-5. That game should have been a massacre. Logan Thompson really kept them in it, and I'm expecting that he'll have another good performance tonight because Logan Thompson is a good goalie. So this is one of those things where Carolina basically needs to just keep doing everything that they are doing and make some little adjustments here and there to maybe get more shots at the interior, because Washington gapped up on the point really well and prevented a lot more shots on goal than there could have been. There could have easily been 45 or 50 total with what they managed to block strictly coming from the point alone. So Carolina probably needs to work to the interior, and then Carolina also has the speed advantage. So if they do work to the interior, they're going to be able to get some quality chances. So Washington's not going to be able to gap up nearly as quick in that end of the ice as Carolina can in theirs. So that's all I really want to put out there for that. And I'll show some other stuff off here. This was something that Walt Ruff re-exed from Mike Kelly. Yes, that Mike Kelly. Hurricanes hockey, tons of zone time and shot volume. Slavin wins it with a point shot in overtime. If more of those point shots start getting through and finishing on the rebounds, and if they can keep shooting low to make sure they generate those juicy rebounds, Carolina will be in good shape going forward. Getting this game was very essential to shifting the series to Carolina's favor. If they can manage to win again tonight, great, but Washington is going to come out physical. We'll talk about that when I do Landfall Hour at 6. Puck zone time, Carolina had 33-28 total offensive zone time. That is greater than half of a normal 60-minute regulation hockey game. That is good. Once they start scoring more, it'll be even better. Puck zone time, 16:51 for the Capitals, 94 shot attempts to 34 shot attempts. So what Sport Logic is saying is different than what was on the NHL website. Carolina had 33 shots to Washington's 14. Inner slot shots 7-6. That's one of the things that I do want to highlight when it comes to Washington. They look more for quality chances than they do volume of chances, and I knew that that was going to be the big difference between these two teams going into this. And that is pretty much it for that. I will get through some of the comments here, and then I'm going to finish up the stuff for Landfall Hour and get that ready. And yes, those are Tommy Bahama chairs behind me. I haven't bought a new couch yet because my old one sure as fuck wasn't going to fit in here. BTS says, I reopened to PK Subban is wrong about everything, so I agree with everything so far. Yeah, and, I remember I posted something where I said that I thought his analysis had taken a sharp downward turn, and people are like, well, when was that ever good? And I will say this, when he first came on to ESPN, I thought he was solid. I thought he was better than the other guys there. I really did. But I don't know what it's been with him the last few weeks, but like during the Winnipeg and Dallas game, he was saying that Dallas had been the better team. He didn't care about like the fact that, they went 10 minutes without a shot on goal or something like that. And I'm like, bro, you can't say that they played well and went 10 minutes without generating a chance at all. And he's like, he said something along the lines of, well, I don't care. It's the playoffs. I'm so sick of like people who are paid a lot of money to analyze this game using such stupid and rudimentary arguments, especially when they played. And he played relatively recently. And I know I'm in the minority of this, but I did not hate PK as a player. I actually really liked him. But him as an analyst this playoffs, he has fallen off a fucking cliff. I don't know what his deal is. He's not nearly as good as he was. Because before he was one of the few people that like were worth listening to on there to some degree or another. And now it's just annoying to even hear him talk. And my girlfriend even said the other day, who's not a big sports person at all, she's, watches games with me and goes to games with me just, to spend time with me and everything. She was like, that guy seems confused. And I'm like, if she's saying that, then there, Crafts, what's up, dude? What's up, buddy? Let's get back to back and change the narrative. That would be nice. That's gonna be difficult because Washington will ramp up the physicality tonight. But I'm definitely thinking that the Canes can get it done. I really do. We have a better chance of winning in 6 with that away win. Yes, we do. No, that definitely helps having home ice shift to us. But 25-meter target, focus on the game tonight. Keep doing everything that you're doing because, like, everything that Carolina's done, they've done well. They really have. And as annoyed as I get about the whole volume shooting, low to high, man-on-man defense, there's a lot of things about the system that just kind of bug me. The volume shooting and lower quality chances and, in favor of getting more chances, that's kind of a different story. That's the one part of it I just normally don't like. But over the course of a 7-game series, if you really, really, really stick with it, it can wear the other team out. Like when you turn it into a war of attrition, it definitely can help them a whole lot. So, and then it's going to get really rough on Washington if they do continue to block. If they block another 30 shots tonight or however many it was, then, that's going to wear you out over the course of a 7-game series. And Washington's not generating much at all. The one goal they got was soft to, at least to say the least. So that's one that Freddie should have had. David says, I agree. The reffing wasn't bad. A couple of blatant trips that didn't get called, though. Yeah, in the grand scheme of NHL officiating, that game was very well officiated. And they missed them on both sides. I'm not going to pretend that it was only Carolina. Like, both sides got away with a couple of really bad trips. And, depending on what you want to define cross-checking as, maybe Matt Roy should have got a penalty for what he did after the whistle. But for the most part, they just let him play. Now, that's one thing that does kind of worry me about tonight is I know Washington is going to be extra physical, and they do have one or two players that like to, push the envelope when it comes to the rules of what is and isn't a legal hit, and they know who they are, and they know that they do it. That's why it's like when Sam Bennett's like, oh, I didn't mean to hurt the guy. It's like, in regards to what happened with him and, between Sam Bennett and Stolars in game 1 between the Panthers and the Leafs. This type of stuff happens too often, and certain players do it too frequently for it to continue to be an accident. I'm just saying, if you go out there and you wreck your car twice a year, it's either incompetency or you have some sort of weird fetish for wrecking your fucking car. BTS says, I'm glad Slavin scored, as I have 74 people viewing. That's pretty cool. It was a good time for his first ever playoff goal. Yeah. Good job, NHL Network. But, the unpaid intern, you can only get so mad at him. I saw your thing about helmets, and I showed my dad, and he said, just send me the logo by itself, and he thinks he can do it. Yeah, I'll be doing that soon. The only thing is I got to measure and see how big I want to make them because there's going to be 3 of them, and BG is making an inverted version of the TW one to go on the black helmet, so the TW part of it's going to be red to go on my black helmet. So I'm really, really looking forward to doing all that stuff. So all right, guys. So here's what I'm going to try to do tonight. Let me know what you think about this format in the comments with Damage Report because, oh, wait, hold up. Stop everything we're doing. Katie, how are you doing? I hope the Canes can control the NS and prevent too many rush chances of show they should win again. Yeah. So that was one thing that I talked about in the series forecast. This series is going to be critical of what goes on between the blue lines. Like when it comes to the neutral zone and everything like that, Carolina places an emphasis on zone entry denials, and Washington was having a hard time entering the zone against Montreal, like when I was watching that series. And I'm like, sitting there thinking, I'm like, if Washington's having a hard time entering the zone against Montreal, Carolina should massacre them in that regard. They should barely have a clean entry that entire game, as long as you're smart about it and everything. And for the most part, Washington, like when they did generate chances, they did them on clean entries, but they didn't do it very much. So they've had a really hard time with it on the power play as well. Washington has. So I think that there's like, when it comes to that transition game and everything, if Carolina can manage to continue to deny entry as much as they are and use their speed advantage to make that quick transition play and get to the other end and make entries before Washington has a chance to back check, that's where the series can be won and lost, is in between the blue lines. Deny at one end, transition quickly, get into the other end really quickly, and you can make entries with numbers. And even if you do have to dump the puck in and go get it, Carolina's really good at puck retrieval with numbers. So that's something that if they maintain that, like you're saying, it will be great. Oh, Kane's Network, what's up, buddy? Hey, I just got home from work. Yeah, I'm going to be wrapping this stream up here in a little bit, but at 6 o'clock, we'll be doing Landfall Hour. Now, I would like everyone to tell me what you think of the format. I went for something simple for Damage Report. I didn't want anything super detailed because it's only talking about one game that has already occurred. I might add a couple of extra stats into it and everything like that, but I wanted Damage Report to be formatted as a short format 15 to 30 minute type of show that could be done after games, and that the format could be used for the playoffs and for regular season games. So you guys let me know what you think about that in the comments and everything. Comment on X, comment on the YouTube video and all that, and let me know what you think. Because originally the reason it took me so long to preview an actual Damage Report format was because I was sitting there thinking about how much, information I wanted to put into it. And originally I had like 26 slides. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of ridiculous. I don't need this much to talk about one game that is already over. When you're previewing a game, there's a bunch of different factors. There's a whole lot of variables. When you're previewing a series, there's a ton of variables. When you're going back and talking about a season series or a playoff series, there's a ton of different factors and a ton of different variables and a ton of events that have already occurred and information that has to be displayed to quantify those. But if you're talking about one isolated hockey game, there's actually not that much. So I cut all that stuff out and I added the thing that Mike Kelly tweeted at like the last minute just to give it a little bit more. But let's see what we got here from BTS. I like it. Have you thought about doing a Steve Dangle kind of thing where you do a review of every game? No, I probably won't. Now, the reason why I'm not, so here's the whole thing about it. And I just want to make this abundantly clear. This is not meant to be a slight on Steve Dangle or the hockey guy or anybody else. I do not feel comfortable attempting to make content regarding the league at large. There's a multitude of reasons for that. One, if I try to make content on the league at large, I think that would eat into my time and ultimately eat into how much effort I put into each individual product, and the quality of things will go down from there. So, because I spend more time preparing streams and preparing videos than I do actually making them. I spend more time on slide. I'd say it's about a 3-to-1 ratio, the amount of time I spend gathering data and slides and putting the slides together or whatever else I'm going to use for the streams than I do actually streaming. So for every 1 hour I stream, it's probably 3 hours of preparation, just to be perfectly honest, in some degree or another. The second thing being THG is an example I got to use here. Since the league expanded, because I started watching him a long time ago, there were still, I think it was still only 30 teams in the league when I started watching him. Because he got big during Vegas's inaugural season. The reason I don't want to try and cover the game as a whole like he does is I think it creates some sort of, for example, the thing about he didn't really mention Nikishin because he wasn't a first rounder or something like that. And I'm like, no, this is a very important prospect. This guy was setting records in the KHL for defensemen. And, he basically narrows it down to, well, he's not a first rounder, so I'm not going to talk about him, even though he could be a really big impact player for the Canes in the future. The potential to, win a Calder Trophy, a Norris Trophy, and, be leading, be the all-time leader for the Canes as far as points among defensemen. There's a ton of potential that kid has. But when you try to cover 32 teams, it's very difficult. And I wanted to make something that was centric for Carolina Hurricanes fans. Another reason why I decided to do that was I remember, and this was way before whoever's hosting Locked On now, I think that this guy's name was Jared. Back in the day, I stumbled across Locked On Hurricanes, and I listened to it. This was when Tony DeAngelo was on the team the first time, so it was 21-22 season. And this guy, I want to say his name was Jared. I don't know what it was, but he hardly talked about hockey in the 15 to 20 minutes that I listened to this podcast. It was just pure hatred of Tony DeAngelo and bitching about various other things, but he barely talked about the game. And I'm like, well, if I ever have my own thing, because I've been thinking about starting this a long time ago, if I ever have my own thing, I'm not going to be like that about it. So he was using hockey as a platform to talk about a player that he just outright didn't like. And if you actually confronted him about it, I don't think he could back up his arguments. So there was that. There was another prominent Canes YouTuber who is, and I hate to say this because I know how bad it, there's another prominent Canes YouTuber who I won't name who has to, YouTube is his job. He has multiple channels on multiple different things. I got tired of his clickbaity ass titles though. And I'm like, you know what? I'd rather have a small channel with a small audience that knows exactly what I'm going to talk about every time that I click on it, because I get tired of these thumbnails that have a bunch of arrows pointing at something and the title is like, you'll never believe what happened in this game. And I'm just like, I'd rather just build an organic audience. And that's why I do have respect for THG, even though I feel like that the quality of his content has changed as he tries to cover more things. But this other guy, he's kind of a condescending prick. And I actually unfollowed his other YouTube channel. When I start my own thing one day, I'm going to be different. So that's why I decided I wanted to have a Hurricanes, and ultimately these guys, when I start putting more content out for them, I just haven't figured out how I'm going to go about it yet. I wanted to have a Hurricane-centric YouTube channel, or Hurricane-centric medium, whatever you want to call it. And, you know, that doesn't mean I won't occasionally talk about other things or talk about other players, but I felt like that there was a lack of quality content creators for the Canes. Then I came across Caniac Sessions. I listened to them, and then I listened to Caniac Report, and now I'm like really good friends with those guys in real life. And I'm the third host on Caniac Sessions now. So there's like a lot of good Canes content out there, but some lower quality content that was made by people who, like, just quite honestly, they just fucking suck. There were a lot of them out there, and they had the vast majority of the bandwidth. It's going to take me forever to build this stuff up to be where I want it to be. But I'd rather take the long way around than post a bunch of clickbaity ass videos. And that's just the way that I decided to be about it. Levy, what's up, dude? The organic audience and the fact that both you and your community dare to have actual opinions on things is exactly why I, and I assume many others, like watching your stuff. Thank you. I appreciate it. And that's another thing that I noticed with, I have another friend who does YouTube. I won't call him a friend. I'll call him an acquaintance. He does it about other things that's not sports related. And him and I were out one night. I wasn't really there to hang out with him. Him and I knew each other through mutual friends. And he was telling me about how actual opinions about stuff on YouTube because he wants to have a larger audience. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, well, if this was way before I started YouTube, this was like 3-4 years ago. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, well, if they find out that you're lying to them, what fraction of your audience are you going to lose because of that? I think that's something that has to, you know, be considered and everything. So I just didn't want to be like that. I'd rather not be a frequent uploader and, you know, try to give you guys the best stuff that I can. And more than anything, I want to be genuine. What I think is what you will hear me say. And that's why I got really pissed off when people were going around saying that I said that I wanted Rod fired, which couldn't be further from the truth. I said I wanted him to adjust some things, and people turned that into me saying I wanted him fired. And I never said that. I even said, if you can find somewhere where I said that Rod should be fired, $100 right now. And guess what? I still have $500. But yeah, so that was my whole mentality about it. And I still constantly have to like try and figure out like ways that I want to present data and everything like that, what's relevant, what's not, and all that type of stuff. Like, you know, a lot of people use like offensive zone and defensive zone start percentages, and I don't really care about that in select situations. I think Corsi and Fenwick shouldn't be applied to individual players, but I'm gonna make a whole video about that, about why I cite what stats I do. That's gonna be an off-season thing. But yeah. BTS says, that's what I like about the X group chat. Even if we disagree, we can still have a good conversation. Yep, I agree with that. Herbert Williams says, what's your opinion of the Toronto Maple Leafs? If you mean in regards to whether they're gut, Their blue line that they have right now, I think, is better than probably one they've had in the Core 4 era. I think it's a little bit more balanced. There's a lot of guys on that team I like. I like Austin Matthews. I like Matthew Nyes. I would like for Matthew Nyes to be a Hurricane. Don't worry, I will get into talking about that at some point. Marner, I like Marner. Come to think of it, there's nobody on that team I just really don't like. There used to be, like when David Clarkson played, I hated David Clarkson. I'm like, why is this guy even here? Who else? Dion Phaneuf, couldn't stand him. Respected him, didn't like him. Trying to think of a few others. Yeah, I'm kind of indifferent on the Leafs as far as like liking them or disliking the franchise. All the Leafs fans I know are really, really cool. I'm hoping they can find a way to beat Florida. I really do. Yeah, I think they're pretty solid. If we were to play them in the second round, I think it would be, or excuse me, in the third round, I think it would be a pretty entertaining series, and it would be less hate-inducing than if we played Florida in the ECF again, should Carolina advance past Washington. All right, guys. So I'm going to go finish getting everything ready for landfall hour. That will occur at 6 o'clock. I will see you guys then. Thank you very much for joining me. And like I stated before, I will do my best to do damage report directly after the game tonight. If not, at least do it tomorrow. Follow me on X. You can keep up with it that way. I've got a link for donations in the description on YouTube on Buy Me a Coffee if you want to send me some money and everything like that, which helps out. I'll finish these last two comments here. Levy says Matthew Nyes would be an absolute dream acquisition via offer sheet this summer. We need to get our third round pick back to do that. Yeah, that's the only problem because we don't have the third rounder to get it, and he's going to be in that bracket that would require that. I think that you have, I'm sorry, I'm signal cut out there for a second. I think you have a better shot at acquiring Nyes through trade, and that is all entirely dependent on if they keep Marner, because they can't keep Marner and Nyes both. They got to let somebody go between those two, I think, to keep them under the cap. So I would say if they sign Marner, we jump on Nyes and try to trade for him because we got more than enough assets to maybe get that done. We'd have to get our third rounder back to be able to offer sheet him, and I don't know what that would take. But Matthew Nyes with Aho and Jarvis on that top line. Matthew Nyes, I think, is like, he's got a, I hate to reference this particular individual. Matthew Nyes has a skill set that is very similar to Mikko Rantanen, but I think he has an extra little bit of physicality and he looks a little bit faster to me. I'd look at the NHL Edge data to make that comparison there, but I definitely see a player with a very similar skill set and, you know, the great finishing ability to go on top of it. All right, last one here. Herbert Williams says, love how the Leafs finish. Yeah, no, I definitely like how they generate the offense off the rush and how they work in tight and they wait until the last second to get that good little coast-to-coast cross ice pass and bury it. Like they scored a couple of goals like that from when I was watching them last night. All right, guys, I'm going to go get landfall hour ready. I will see you in about 90 minutes. Y'all take care. I'll see you in a bit.